The thundering sound of hooves against the dry earth mingled with Gabriella Thorne's ragged breathing as she ran through the barren New Mexico landscape. Her once fine dress was torn and dusty, her dark hair falling loose from its pins as she fled into the twilight of 1874. Behind her lay everything she had known and everything she had come to fear. The setting sun cast long shadows across the rocky terrain, and Gabriella's strength was failing. 3 days without proper food or rest had taken their toll. She had escaped with nothing but the clothes on her back and a small locket containing the only photograph of her mother. Her pursuers wouldn't be far behind, and the vast emptiness of the territory offered little sanctuary. As the last light faded from the sky, she stumbled, her ankle twisting painfully on a hidden stone. Gabriella fell hard, tears springing to her eyes as much from desperation as from pain. She tried to stand but collapsed again, the realization hitting her with crushing finality she would not outrun them. Not like this. The sound of an approaching rider sent a bolt of terror through her. Frantically, she dragged herself behind a large boulder, pressing her back against the cool stone and struggling to control her breathing. The steady rhythm of hoofbeats grew louder, then slower until they stopped altogether. "Hello," a deep voice called out. "I know someone's there." "I can see your tracks plain as day." Gabriella remained silent, her heart pounding so loudly she was certain the stranger could hear it. "I mean no harm," the voice continued. "Saw you fall from the ridge back yonder. You look like you could use some help." After a moment's hesitation, Gabriella peered around the edge of the boulder. The fading light revealed a tall figure astride a magnificent chestnut stallion. The man wore simple clothes-worn denim, a faded shirt, and a wide-brimmed hat pulled low over his face. A revolver was holstered at his hip, but his posture was relaxed, non-threatening. "Are you hurt, miss?" he asked, dismounting but keeping his distance. I'm fine," Gabriella lied, her voice cracking from thirst. "Please just ride on." The stranger took a step closer, and she could now see his face weathered by sun and wind, but young, perhaps 25 or so, with kind eyes that studied her with concern rather than menace. "You don't look fine," he observed. "And forgive me for saying so, but you don't look like you belong out here alone at nightfall." He glanced at her torn dress and city boots, clearly unsuitable for the harsh terrain. "I don't have any money," Gabriella said quickly. "Nothing of value." The man's expression softened. "I'm not looking to rob you, miss." He removed his hat, revealing dark hair and earnest features. "Name's Noah Jenkins. I run cattle about 20 miles north of here." Gabriella remained silent, uncertain whether to trust this stranger. "You're running from something," Noah said matter-of-factly. It wasn't a question, or someone. Her silence was answer enough. Noah glanced over his shoulder, scanning the darkening landscape. "Whoever it is, they'll catch up quick if you stay here." He paused, seeming to consider something, then made a decision. "Take my horse," he said suddenly, extending the reins toward her. Gabriella stared at him in disbelief. "What? Take my horse," Noah repeated. "Storm here is the fastest mount in the territory. He'll get you where you need to go." "But why would you do that? You don't even know me." "Don't need to," he said simply. "My pa taught me to recognize trouble when I see it and to help when I can. But how will you get home? I've got 2 feet and know this land better than most. I'll be fine." He approached slowly, still holding out the reins. "Where are you headed?" Gabriella hesitated before answering. "Fort Stanton. I have a cousin there." Noah nodded. "Good choice. Army presence there keeps the peace better than most places." He glanced at her injured ankle. "Can you ride?" "Yes," she said, "but I can't accept your horse. It's too much." "Consider it borrowed then," he said with a slight smile. "Fort Stanton's only about 15 miles northeast of here. When you're safe, You can get word to the Jenkins ranch. Someone'll come fetch Storm." Before Gabriella could protest further, the sound of distant riders reached them. Noah's expression hardened as he looked in the direction of the noise. "How many are after you?" he asked quietly. "3 men," she whispered. "My stepfather and his sons." Noah's jaw tightened. Without another word, he helped Gabriella to her feet and assisted her onto the stallion. "Follow the North Star," he instructed, pointing. "Keep to the high ground when you can. There's a creek that runs parallel to your path. Storm knows the way to water." He pressed something into her hand, a small canteen and a bundle wrapped in cloth. "Not much, but it'll get you through the night." "I don't know how to thank you," Gabriella said, her voice thick with emotion. "Just get to safety," Noah replied. "And maybe someday return my horse." There was a warmth in his eyes that gave Gabriella her first real hope in days. With a gentle slap to the stallion's flank, Noah sent them off into the night. "Ride hard," he called after her. "Don't stop till you reach Fort Stanton." As Gabriella rode away, she glanced back to see Noah already moving into the shadows of the boulders, preparing to mislead her pursuers. The realization that a complete stranger would risk himself for her safety brought fresh tears to her eyes. The powerful stallion beneath her seemed to understand the urgency, maintaining a steady pace across the rocky terrain. Gabriella followed Noah's instructions, keeping the North Star ahead as she rode through the moonlit landscape. The night air grew cold, but the borrowed horses' warmth and the exhilaration of escape kept the chill at bay. Hours passed, and Gabriella allowed herself to hope. Perhaps she would reach Fort Stanton by dawn. Perhaps she would truly be free of Harold Blackstone, the man who had married her mother for her small ranch, then made Gabriella's life a torment after her mother's death 6 months ago. When Harold had announced that Gabriella would marry his eldest son, a cruel man twice her age, she knew she had to flee. The beatings that followed her refusal had only strengthened her resolve. The night she escaped, Harold had promised that if he caught her, she would regret ever being born. A shot rang out in the darkness, startling Gabriella from her thoughts. Storm whinnied nervously but continued his steady pace. Another shot, closer this time. Her pursuers had found her trail. "Please," she whispered to the horse, "just a little faster." As if understanding, Storm increased his pace. Gabriella leaned low over his neck, urging him on as they crested a ridge. In the valley below, she could see the faint lights of what had to be Fort Stanton. So close, yet still too far. More shots echoed behind her, and Gabriella risked a glance back. 3 riders were silhouetted against the horizon, gaining ground. She recognized the center figure, tall and broad-shouldered as Harold himself. "Come on, Storm," she urged, fear making her voice tight. "Please." The horse responded valiantly, pushing harder despite hours of running. Gabriella's heart swelled with gratitude for this magnificent animal and the cowboy who had given him to her. As they thundered down the slope toward the fort, Gabriella heard Harold's voice, distant but clear. "Girl, stop now and I'll be merciful." His idea of mercy was the last thing Gabriella wanted. She pressed on, the lights of Fort Stanton growing larger. She could make out buildings now, the outline of the stockade. One final ridge lay between her and safety. As Storm began the ascent, Gabriella felt the horse's rhythm falter. He was tiring, pushed beyond endurance by her desperate flight. Behind them, her pursuers were closing the gap. "Just a little more," she pleaded, tears streaming down her face. "We're almost there." At the top of the ridge, disaster struck. Storm's front hoof caught in a prairie dog hole, and the magnificent animal stumbled, nearly sending Gabriella flying. Though the horse recovered his footing, he now favored his left foreleg, his pace slowing dramatically. Harold's triumphant shout cut through the night. They were less than a quarter-mile behind now, and their horses were fresh. Gabriella made a decision. She would not risk this brave horse's life. Quickly, she dismounted, giving Storm a grateful pat. "Go on," she urged, slapping his flank. "Go." The intelligent animal hesitated, seeming reluctant to leave her. Gabriella slapped him again, harder this time, and Storm trotted away, still limping but moving steadily toward Fort Stanton. Gabriella turned to face her pursuers. If she could not escape, she would at least ensure that Noah's horse did. She stood on the ridgeline, a solitary figure against the starlit sky, and waited. Harold and his sons approached, slowing their horses as they reached her. Harold's face was a mask of barely controlled rage. "You've led us on quite a chase, girl," he snarled, dismounting. "Time to come home." "I will never call your house home," Gabriella replied, surprised by the steadiness in her voice. "My mother's ranch belongs to me, not you." Harold's laugh was cold. "Your mother was fool enough to put everything in my name. You have nothing, Gabriella, nothing but what I choose to give you." "Then I choose nothing," she said defiantly. Harold's expression darkened. He took a step toward her, hand raised to strike, when a voice rang out from behind Gabriella. "That's far enough." All eyes turned to see a party of riders approaching from the direction of Fort Stanton, their rifles gleaming in the moonlight. At their head rode a man in an officer's uniform, and beside him, astride a familiar chestnut stallion, was Noah Jenkins. "This doesn't concern you, soldier," Harold growled. "This is family business. When gunshots disturb the peace near a U.S. Army fort, it becomes my business," the officer replied coldly, "especially when it involves the pursuit of a lone woman." Noah dismounted and walked to Gabriella's side. "You all right, miss?" he asked quietly. "How did you?" she began. "Took a shortcut," he said with a slight smile. "Been to Fort Stanton enough times to know a faster route than the one I sent you on. The horse is fine, just a minor sprain. He's tougher than he looks." Harold's face contorted with anger. "She is my stepdaughter and she has stolen from me. I demand her return to my custody." Noah stepped forward. "What exactly did she steal, Mr. Blackstone? Harold Blackstone?" He gestured at Gabriella's torn dress. "Does she look like she's carrying anything of value? Use your eyes, man." The officer dismounted, approaching Harold with measured steps. "I'm Captain Reynolds, commanding officer at Fort Stanton. Perhaps we should continue this discussion at the fort, where the young lady can receive medical attention and we can sort out these accusations." Harold looked from the officer to his armed men, then to Gabriella standing protectively near Noah. The odds had shifted dramatically against him. "This isn't over," he said to Gabriella, his voice low with menace. Then he turned to his sons. "Mount up. We'll settle this another way." As Harold and his sons rode away into the darkness, Gabriella felt her strength finally give out. Her knees buckled, and she would have fallen if Noah hadn't caught her. "I've got you," he said softly, lifting her into his arms. "You're safe now." As consciousness slipped away, Gabriella's last thought was of the strange twist of fate that had brought this kind cowboy back into her life. When Gabriella awoke, she was in a sparse but clean room, lying on a narrow bed with fresh sheets. Sunlight streamed through a small window, illuminating dust motes dancing in the air. For a moment, she was disoriented, then the events of the previous night came rushing back. She sat up quickly, wincing at the pain in her ankle. A woman in a simple dress looked up from her sewing in the corner. "Easy now," the woman said, setting aside her work. "That ankle needs rest." "Where am I?" Gabriella asked, her voice hoarse. "The infirmary at Fort Stanton," the woman replied, pouring a glass of water from a pitcher. "I'm Clara, the doctor's wife. I've been looking after you while he tends to the soldiers." Gabriella accepted the water gratefully. "How long have I been asleep?" Nearly a full day. It's past noon now. Clara smiled kindly. You must have been exhausted, poor thing. Memories of Noah Jenkins flooded Gabriella's mind. There was a man who helped me, the cowboy. He's been by to check on you several times. Clara's eyes twinkled. Seems quite concerned for a man who claims to barely know you. Gabriella felt a blush warming her cheeks. He saved my life, twice actually. Well, he's speaking with Captain Reynolds now, something about your stepfather making trouble in town. Alarm shot through Gabriella. Harold's here. In Fort Stanton, Clara nodded. Arrived this morning, making all sorts of accusations. But don't you worry. The captain's not one to be fooled easily, and that cowboy of yours has been quite adamant about protecting you. Before Gabriella could respond to the phrase, your cowboy, the door opened, and Noah himself entered, followed by Captain Reynolds. Noah's face brightened visibly when he saw Gabriella awake. Miss Thorne, he said, removing his hat. Good to see you looking better. Captain Reynolds stepped forward. Miss Thorne, I hope you're feeling recovered enough to answer some questions. Your stepfather has lodged a formal complaint. Of course, Gabriella replied, sitting straighter despite her fatigue. I have nothing to hide. Harold Blackstone claims you stole legal documents and a substantial sum of money before fleeing his home, the captain said, his tone neutral. He demands your immediate return to his custody. Gabriella's hands trembled slightly, but her voice remained steady. The only thing I took from that house was myself, Captain. After my mother died, Harold made it clear that I was property, not family. He arranged for me to marry his son against my will. She hesitated, then added quietly, when I refused, they beat me. Noah's expression darkened at this, his hands clenching into fists at his sides. That's a serious accusation, Miss Thorne, Captain Reynolds said. Do you have any proof? Gabriella slowly turned, pulling down the collar of her borrowed nightdress to reveal the yellowing bruises on her shoulder and back. Clara gasped softly, and Noah muttered something under his breath that sounded like a curse. There's more, Gabriella said, facing them again. But the worst is hidden by my clothes. That was Harold's specialty, ensuring the marks wouldn't show in public. Captain Reynolds's professional demeanor softened slightly. I see. And the matter of your mother's ranch. My mother owned a small spread near Cimarron. When she married Harold 2 years ago, he convinced her to put the deed in his name for safekeeping. After she died, Gabriella's voice caught. After she died, he told me I had no claim to anything, that I could stay on as a servant or marry his son Thomas. Noah spoke up. Captain, I've made inquiries in town. Blackstone has a reputation in Cimarron. 2 previous wives, both dead under questionable circumstances, both with property that somehow became his. That may be, Mr. Jenkins, but without legal proof, my hands are tied, the captain replied. Miss Thorne is of age, so I can prevent her forcible return to Blackstone's custody, but I cannot intervene in what appears to be a civil matter regarding property. So she's safe here, Noah pressed. For now, Captain Reynolds confirmed, but Fort Stanton is not a permanent solution. Blackstone has influential friends in the territorial government. He turned to Gabriella. I suggest you consider your next steps carefully, Miss Thorne. After the captain left, Clara busied herself preparing a tray of food for Gabriella. Noah lingered by the door, turning his hat in his hands, seemingly unsure whether to stay or go. Thank you, Gabriella said softly, for everything. Noah's expression was troubled. Don't thank me yet. Blackstone doesn't strike me as a man who gives up easily. No, Gabriella agreed, he doesn't. Clara placed the tray beside Gabriella and tactfully excused herself, leaving them alone. Noah moved closer, taking a seat in the chair beside the bed. You mentioned a cousin in Fort Stanton. Gabriella looked down at her hands. A lie, I'm afraid. I didn't know where else to go, and I'd heard there was an army presence here. So you have no one, no family at all, none that would stand against Harold. She met his gaze. What will happen now? Noah was quiet for a moment, considering. I have a small ranch north of here. It's not much, but there's a cabin where you could stay until we sort this out. Gabriella asked, surprised by the offer. I've crossed paths with men like Blackstone before, Noah said, his expression hardening. Men who take what isn't theirs and hurt those weaker than themselves. I'm not about to walk away now. Gabriella studied him, this stranger who had already risked so much for her. Why are you helping me, Mr. Jenkins? Truly? Noah looked away, a faint color rising in his tanned cheeks. My sister, he said quietly. She married a man like Blackstone. By the time I learned what was happening, it was too late. His eyes, when they met hers again, held a mixture of pain and determination. I couldn't help her. Maybe I can help you. The simplicity and honesty of his answer moved Gabriella deeply. I'm sorry about your sister, she said. Noah nodded once, acknowledging her sympathy. So, what do you say? Will you come to the ranch, at least until we can figure out a more permanent solution? Gabriella hesitated only briefly. What choice did she really have? Yes, she said, and thank you. We'll leave tomorrow at first light, Noah said, rising. Rest now, you'll need your strength. As he turned to go, Gabriella called after him. Mr. Jenkins, he paused at the door. Noah, please. Noah, she repeated, the name feeling strangely comfortable on her lips. I don't know how I'll ever repay you for your kindness. A smile, the first real smile she'd seen from him, transformed his serious face. Let's start with you getting better, Miss Thorne. Gabriella, she corrected gently. Gabriella, he echoed, tipping his hat before leaving the room. Left alone, Gabriella stared at the closed door, wondering at the strange path her life had taken. 3 days ago, she had been a prisoner in her stepfather's house. Now she was placing her trust and safety in the hands of a man she barely knew. Yet somehow, she felt safer than she had in months. Outside the infirmary window, Fort Stanton bustled with activity. Soldiers drilled in the yard, wagons delivered supplies, and somewhere in this small frontier outpost, Harold Blackstone was plotting his next move. Gabriella knew her stepfather well enough to be certain of that. But for the first time since her mother's death, Gabriella felt a flicker of hope. Whatever came next, she would face it with courage and perhaps with an unexpected ally by her side. The journey to Noah Jenkins's ranch began in the pre-dawn stillness. Captain Reynolds provided an escort to the edge of Fort Stanton's jurisdiction, a gesture of support that Noah clearly appreciated. Gabriella, dressed in borrowed clothes that were too large for her slender frame, rode Storm once again, the stallion seemingly happy to carry her. As the fort disappeared behind them, Gabriella studied Noah's profile against the lightening sky. In the 2 days since their first meeting, she had learned little about him beyond his sister's fate and his evident dislike of men like Harold. He was reserved, speaking only when necessary, but his actions revealed a deeply principled man. It's about 4 hours' ride, Noah said, breaking the comfortable silence. The land isn't much to look at compared to some spreads, but it's mine, free and clear. How long have you had it? Gabriella asked. 3 years now. Worked as a ranch hand for the Barham outfit, saved every penny. The previous owner was heading back east and sold it to me for a fair price. Pride was evident in his voice. 200 acres, a small herd, and a cabin that doesn't leak too badly when it rains. It sounds wonderful, Gabriella said sincerely. Noah glanced at her, a hint of amusement in his eyes. You might not think so when you see it. It's not what a lady like you is accustomed to. You'd be surprised what I've grown accustomed to, Mr. Jenkins. She touched the fading bruise on her cheek. A roof that doesn't house my tormentor is paradise enough. Noah's expression sobered. Fair point. After a pause, he added, and I thought we agreed on Noah. A small smile touched Gabriella's lips. Noah it is. They rode on as the sun climbed higher, the landscape gradually changing from scrubby desert to rolling grassland, dotted with juniper and piñon pine. Noah pointed out landmarks and shared bits of local knowledge where to find water in dry months, which areas to avoid during flash floods, how to read the clouds for coming weather. You know this land well, Gabriella observed. Noah nodded. Been in New Mexico territory since I was 16. Came west from Tennessee with my pa after the war. He didn't want to rebuild in a place with so many ghosts. A shadow crossed his face. He died my first year here. Pneumonia took him hard and fast. I'm sorry, Gabriella said softly. My father died when I was young as well. It was just my mother and me until she married Harold. She hesitated, then added, I sometimes wonder if she knew what he really was. People see what they want to see, Noah replied, especially when they're lonely. The simple wisdom of his words struck Gabriella. Her mother had been lonely after years of widowhood, and Harold Blackstone had presented himself as a respectable rancher, charming and attentive. The cruel reality had emerged only after the wedding. By midday, they crested a ridge, and Noah reined his horse to a halt. There it is, he said, gesturing to the valley below. Jenkins Ranch. Gabriella followed his gaze. A modest cabin stood near a small creek surrounded by corrals and outbuildings. In the distance, cattle grazed on the hillsides. It was simple, unassuming, and utterly peaceful. It's lovely, she said honestly. Noah looked pleased despite his attempt to remain impassive. It's not much, but it's yours, Gabriella finished for him. That makes it special. As they descended into the valley, a figure emerged from the cabin, a gray-haired man with a weathered face who waved at their approach. That's Eli, Noah explained. He helps out around the place. Was a friend of my pa's from before the war. Eli greeted them warmly, his eyes twinkling with curiosity as Noah introduced Gabriella. Any friend of Noah's is welcome here, he said, helping her dismount. Been a while since we had a lady grace this humble abode. While Noah tended to the horses, Eli showed Gabriella to the cabin. The interior was simple but tidy, a main room with a stone fireplace, a rough-hewn table with chairs, and shelves lined with books that surprised her. A doorway led to a small bedroom. Noah's quarters, Eli explained. You'll take them, of course. He and I will bunk in the lean-to out back. Oh, I couldn't possibly, Gabriella began to protest. Nonsense, Eli interrupted gently. My old bones prefer the lean-to anyway, closer to the privy. He winked, putting her at ease. By the time Noah joined them, Eli had started preparing a meal, filling the cabin with the aroma of coffee and biscuits. Noah had cleaned up, his hair still damp from washing, and he'd changed into a fresh shirt. Hope you're hungry, Eli said. Made enough for an army. They ate together at the table, the conversation flowing more easily than Gabriella expected. Eli was a natural storyteller, regaling them with tales of his adventures before settling in New Mexico. Noah was more animated in the older man's presence, occasionally interjecting with a dry comment that made them all laugh. For Gabriella, who had eaten in fearful silence for months in Harold's house, the simple meal was a revelation. Here were two men who asked nothing of her but her company, who seemed genuinely pleased to have her at their table. The contrast to her recent life was stark and moving. After the meal, Noah cleared his throat. Eli, Miss Thorne, Gabriella is in some trouble. Her stepfather is a dangerous man who will likely come looking for her. Eli's expression turned serious. What kind of trouble are we talking about, son? Noah glanced at Gabriella, silently asking permission to continue. She nodded, and he briefly explained the situation. When he finished, Ellie's face was grim. Known men like that, weasels in human skin. He reached across the table and patted Gabriella's hand. "You're safe here, miss. Between Noah and me, that stepfather of yours won't get within a mile of you." Tears pricked at Gabriella's eyes. "Thank you," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "No need for thanks," Ellie replied gruffly. "Decent folks look out for each other. That's all there is to it." That evening, despite her protests, Gabriella found herself installed in Noah's room. The space was spare but comfortable, with a narrow bed covered in a handmade quilt, a small chest of drawers, and a window overlooking the creek. Noah had left a lamp burning and a pitcher of fresh water on the nightstand. As Gabriella prepared for sleep, she noticed a small shelf of books beside the bed, mostly practical volumes on ranching and animal husbandry, but also a collection of poetry by Whitman and a well-worn Bible. These glimpses into Noah's private world intrigued her, revealing dimensions to the quiet cowboy that she hadn't expected. She slept better that night than she had in months, lulled by the distant sound of the creek and the knowledge that, for the moment at least, she was truly safe. The next few days established a routine. Gabriella, determined not to be a burden, insisted on helping with chores. Ellie taught her to cook on the temperamental wood stove, and she took over meal preparation, freeing the men for their ranch work. In the afternoons, she often sat by the creek, washing clothes or simply enjoying the peaceful surroundings. Noah was often absent during daylight hours, tending to cattle or riding the boundaries of his property. But each evening he returned, and they shared meals together, the conversation growing more comfortable with each passing day. On the fifth day, Gabriella was hanging laundry when Noah approached, looking troubled. "Rode into town this morning," he said without preamble. "Blackstone's been asking questions, offering rewards for information about your whereabouts." Gabriella's hand stilled on the damp shirt she was hanging. "How did he know to look here? Fort Stanton isn't that big. Someone must have mentioned my name or recognized Storm when we left." Noah's expression was grave. "He'll find us eventually." "I should leave," Gabriella said immediately. "I've brought danger to your door." "No," Noah interrupted firmly. "Running alone is exactly what he wants. You're safer here with us." "But your ranch, your livelihood, can be rebuilt if necessary." Noah stepped closer. "Gabriella, I made you a promise. I intend to keep it." The intensity in his eyes sent an unexpected warmth through Gabriella. This man, who owed her nothing, was willing to risk everything to protect her. The realization was both humbling and confusing because of the unfamiliar feelings it stirred within her. "Thank you," she said softly, unable to find adequate words for her gratitude. Noah nodded once, then changed the subject. "I've been thinking about your mother's ranch. You said the deed was in Blackstone's name." "Yes, my mother trusted him." Bitterness tinged her voice. "A mistake that cost her everything." "Maybe not everything," Noah mused. "Marriage documents, property transfers, they all require witnesses, notarization." There would be records at the county clerk's office in Cimarron. Hope flared briefly in Gabriella's chest, only to die just as quickly. Even if there were some irregularity, how would we prove it? Harold has influence with local officials. No one would stand against him. "Perhaps," Noah conceded, "but truth has a way of coming to light, especially when someone's looking for it." The determination in his voice gave Gabriella pause. "What are you suggesting?" "I'm not sure yet," Noah admitted, "but doing nothing only ensures Blackstone wins." That evening, after Ellie had retired to the lean-to, Noah and Gabriella sat by the fire, discussing possibilities. The flickering light cast shadows across Noah's face as he leaned forward, elbows on knees. "If we could find evidence that Blackstone coerced your mother or falsified documents, we might have a case," he said thoughtfully. "My mother kept a journal," Gabriella remembered suddenly. "She wrote in it every night. After she died, I couldn't find it. I assumed Harold destroyed it, but what if he simply hid it?" Noah straightened. "That could be valuable. What might it contain?" "Everything. Her thoughts, daily events." Gabriella's mind raced. She was meticulous about recording details. If she had doubts about Harold, or if he pressured her regarding the property, she would have written it down. "So we need to find this journal," Noah said, "which means returning to Blackstone's ranch." Gabriella's stomach clenched at the thought. "It's too dangerous. For you, yes. But not necessarily for me." Noah's expression was resolute. "I could go, perhaps with a story about buying cattle." "He'd be suspicious of any stranger," Gabriella argued. "Especially now." "Perhaps," Noah conceded. "But we need that journal if we're going to fight him legally." Their discussion continued late into the night, neither reaching a satisfactory plan. Eventually, exhaustion overcame them, and Gabriella retired to Noah's room while he made his bed near the fire. As she lay in the darkness, Gabriella thought about Noah's determination to help her reclaim her mother's property. His commitment went beyond mere kindness to a stranger. There was something personal in his resolve, something that spoke of his own past wounds. Morning brought no easy answers, but it did bring a visitor. Gabriella was kneading bread dough when the sound of an approaching horse drew her attention. Through the window, she saw a rider approaching a man in the uniform of a Fort Stanton soldier. Noah met the soldier outside, their conversation inaudible from within the cabin. When Noah returned, his expression was grim. "Captain Reynolds sent word," he said. "Blackstone has filed formal charges of theft against you with the territorial court. He claims you stole family heirlooms and cash." Gabriella's hands trembled as she wiped flour from them. "It's a lie." "Of course it is," Noah agreed, "but it gives him legal grounds to pursue you. The captain has delayed serving the warrant, but he can't ignore it indefinitely. So I'm to be arrested." The thought of being dragged back to Harold's control made Gabriella physically ill. "Not if I can help it." Noah paced the small room. "This changes things. We need to move faster." "What do you mean?" "I mean we need that journal, and we need evidence of Blackstone's true character." Noah stopped pacing, his decision made. "I'm riding to Cimarron tomorrow." "Noah, no," Gabriella protested. "It's too dangerous." "It's our only chance," he countered. "I know people there who owed my father favors. I can stay with them, ask questions discreetly." "And what about Blackstone's ranch?" "The journal?" Noah hesitated. "One step at a time. First, I need to understand what we're up against legally." That night, as Noah prepared for his journey, Gabriella was consumed with worry. The thought of him riding into danger on her behalf was almost unbearable. When had this man's safety become so important to her? As Noah checked his saddlebags by lamplight, Gabriella approached him hesitantly. "I've been thinking," she said. "I should come with you." Noah looked up, surprised. "Out of the question. Blackstone is actively searching for you." "Exactly. He's looking for a woman traveling alone, not a couple." Gabriella took a deep breath. "If I cut my hair, dress as a boy, too risky," Noah interrupted. "If you're recognized, then we'll have lost nothing more than we would if you fail to find evidence," Gabriella argued. "Noah, it's my mother's journal, my mother's ranch. I know where to look, who to ask." Her voice softened. "Please, I can't just hide here while you risk everything." Noah studied her for a long moment, his expression unreadable. Finally, he sighed. "Illy won't like it." Hope surged through Gabriella. "Is that a yes?" "It's an I'll think about it," Noah replied, Get some rest. We'll discuss it in the morning." Morning arrived with Noah's reluctant agreement to Gabriella's plan. Ellie protested vehemently, but ultimately helped prepare for their journey. With scissors and stern determination, he cropped Gabriella's long dark hair into a boyish style. Dressed in Noah's old clothes, her feminine figure concealed by a loose shirt and vest, she was transformed into a passable young man. "Remember to lower your voice," Ellie instructed as they prepared to depart. "Walk with purpose, not grace, and for heaven's sake, don't giggle." "I'll be careful," Gabriella promised, embracing the old man. "Thank you for everything." Ellie turned to Noah, his expression serious. "Keep her safe, son, and keep yourself safe too." "We'll be back before you know it," Noah assured him, though his eyes betrayed his concern. They set out at dawn, Gabriella riding Storm while Noah rode a sturdy bay gelding. Their plan was simple: travel to Cimarron, where Noah had contacts, then gather evidence before potentially attempting to access Blackstone's ranch. The journey would take 3 days, following less traveled paths to avoid unwanted encounters. As they rode, Noah coached Gabriella on maintaining her disguise. "Keep your hat pulled low," he advised. "Speak only when necessary and let me do most of the talking. Your new name is Gabriel, my cousin from Texas." Gabriella nodded, concentrating on sitting astride like a man's shoulders square, posture less refined than her natural carriage. The disguise was uncomfortable but liberating. As Gabriel, she could move through the world with a freedom she'd never known. Their first night on the trail, they camped in a small grove of trees near a stream. Noah built a fire while Gabriella collected water, each falling naturally into their roles. As they ate a simple meal of beans and jerky, Gabriella found herself studying Noah in the firelight. "What?" he asked, noticing her gaze. "I was just thinking how strange life is," she replied. 2 weeks ago, I didn't know you existed. Now I'm disguised as a boy, riding with you to confront the man who made my life a misery." Noah smiled faintly. "Life has a way of taking unexpected turns. Why are you really doing this?" Gabriella asked the question that had lingered in her mind. "The truth, Noah. It can't just be about your sister." Noah was quiet for so long that Gabriella thought he might not answer. Finally, he spoke, his voice low. "When my sister married James Fletcher, we all thought she'd found happiness. He seemed kind, respectful, but once they were wed, he changed." Noah's eyes reflected the dancing flames. He isolated her from family, controlled every aspect of her life. When she finally wrote to me, begging for help, I was working a cattle drive in Colorado. He paused, pain etched in his features. "By the time I returned, she was gone. Fletcher claimed she'd run off with another man, but no one had seen her leave. No one had seen her for weeks before she supposedly disappeared." Gabriella's heart ached for him. "You think he killed her?" It wasn't a question, but Noah nodded anyway. "I know he did. But without evidence, without a body, the law did nothing. Fletcher sold their property and moved on, probably to find another victim." His jaw tightened. "I swore then that if I ever encountered a similar situation, I wouldn't stand by and watch it happen again." "I'm so sorry," Gabriella whispered. Noah met her gaze across the fire. "When I saw you running that night, when I realized you were fleeing for your life, I knew I couldn't ride away." The intensity of his gaze made Gabriella's heart beat faster. There was something in his eyes beyond compassion or duty, something that both frightened and thrilled her. "I'm glad you didn't," she said softly. The moment stretched between them, filled with unspoken feelings. Then Noah cleared his throat and stood, breaking the spell. "We should get some rest," he said. "Long ride tomorrow." As Gabriella settled into her bedroll, she found herself more confused than ever about her feelings toward Noah Jenkins. Gratitude, certainly. Respect, without question. But there was something else growing, something she was afraid to name. The second day of travel passed without incident, though they skirted a group of riders who Noah suspected might be Blackstone's men. By evening, they had reached the foothills that marked the approach to Cimarron. "We'll stay with Jacob Stern," Noah explained as they made camp. "He was my father's partner in a mining venture years ago. His family owns the general store in Cimarron." "Can he be trusted?" Gabriella asked. "With our lives," Noah assured her. "He helped me when I was searching for my sister. Stern has no love for men who abuse power or women." The following afternoon, they rode into Cimarron, a bustling town that served as a hub for ranchers, miners, and travelers heading along the Santa Fe Trail. Gabriella kept her head down, conscious of maintaining her disguise as they made their way to Stern's general store. Jacob Stern proved to be a short, barrel-chested man with a booming voice and shrewd eyes that missed nothing. He welcomed Noah warmly and accepted the introduction to Gabriel without comment, though his penetrating gaze suggested he wasn't entirely fooled. After closing the store, Stern led them to his home behind the main building, where his wife Sarah greeted them with equal warmth. Once inside, with doors closed and curtains drawn, Stern addressed Gabriella directly. "So, young lady, what kind of trouble has brought you to my doorstep in this unusual attire?" Gabriella's surprise must have shown on her face, for Stern chuckled. "I've raised 4 daughters," he explained. "I know a woman's movements, no matter the clothing." With Noah's encouraging nod, Gabriella shared her story. The Sterns listened without interruption, their expressions growing darker as she described Harold's treatment of her and her suspicions about her mother's death. "Blackstone," Stern muttered when she finished. "I know of him. Keeps to himself mostly, but comes to town to conduct business. Always seemed too smooth for my liking. We need to find evidence that he coerced my mother or falsified documents," Gabriella explained. "And we need to recover my mother's journal, which might contain proof of his true nature." Stern stroked his beard thoughtfully. "The county records office would have copies of all property transfers. My eldest daughter, Rebecca, works as a clerk there. She might be able to help us examine the documents without raising suspicion." "That would be invaluable," Noah said. "As for the journal," Stern continued, "that's a more dangerous proposition. Blackstone's ranch is well guarded, especially since your escape." He looked at Gabriella with concern. "Attempting to enter would be extremely risky." "I know where my mother would have hidden it," Gabriella insisted. "If I could just get inside for even an hour, let's start with the records," Noah interjected gently. "One step at a time." Sarah Stern, who had been quiet throughout the discussion, suddenly spoke up. "There's another approach we haven't considered. Harold Blackstone has a weakness." All eyes turned to her. "Every month he comes to town for the cattle auction," she explained. "And every month he spends the evening at Madeline Gray's establishment." Jacob Stern's eyebrows rose. "Sarah, how do you know about Madeline's business?" "I know everything that happens in this town, Jacob," she replied with dignity. "And Madeline is a customer at our store, same as anyone else." Gabriella looked confused. "What kind of establishment?" Noah and Stern exchanged uncomfortable glances before Sarah answered matter-of-factly. "A house of ill repute, dear. A brothel." Understanding dawned on Gabriella's face. "And you think the women there might know something about Harold?" "Men talk freely in such places," Sarah said. "Especially after drinking. If Harold has boasted about his dealings or expressed concern about documents or your mother's journal, Madeline's girls might have heard it." The plan took shape quickly after that. Rebecca Stern would help them examine county records the next day. Meanwhile, Sarah would approach Madeline Gray about questioning her employees regarding Harold Blackstone. That night, Gabriella slept in a small room off the Stearns' kitchen, exhausted but hopeful for the first time in weeks. Their disguises, combined with the Stearns' assistance, might actually give them a chance against Harold. Morning brought a flurry of activity. Jacob escorted Noah to the county records office where Rebecca awaited them, while Gabriella remained at the Stern home, helping Sarah with household tasks and maintaining her disguise in case of visitors. By midday, Noah and Jacob returned, their expressions a mixture of excitement and concern. "We found something," Noah announced, spreading papers on the kitchen table. "Rebecca helped us locate the deed transfer from your mother to Blackstone." Gabriella leaned over the documents eagerly. "What did you find?" "The notary's signature," Jacob explained, pointing to a scrawled name at the bottom of the page. "Martin Wells. He left Cimarron 6 months ago, supposedly to visit family in Denver." "But," Gabriella prompted, sensing there was more. "But according to his wife, who still lives here," Noah continued, "he never arrived in Denver. She received one letter from Santa Fe, then nothing. She's been trying to get the territorial authorities to investigate his disappearance." Gabriella's breath caught. "You think Harold had something to do with his disappearance? It's suspicious timing," Jacob said gravely. "Wells notarized the transfer of your mother's property, then vanished shortly after her death." "There's more," Noah added. "Rebecca found another document your mother filed 3 years ago before she married Blackstone. It left everything to you." Hope surged through Gabriella. "Then the ranch is legally mine." "Not quite," Jacob tempered her enthusiasm. "The later deed transfer would supersede the will." "But if we can prove the transfer was coerced or fraudulent, which is why we need my mother's journal," Gabriella finished. Later that afternoon, Sarah returned from her visit to Madeline Gray, her expression triumphant. "Madeline was most cooperative," she reported. "It seems Harold Blackstone has a loose tongue after a few whiskeys. One of the girls, Rosie, says he often boasts about his cleverness in acquiring property. He specifically mentioned having taken care of a troublesome notary." Gabriella's face paled. "Martin Wells." Sarah nodded grimly. "And there's more. Rosie says Blackstone is concerned about some journal or diary. He's been searching his house for it, apparently quite desperately." "It still exists," Gabriella breathed. "He hasn't found it." "Madeline also shared that Blackstone will be in town for the cattle auction tomorrow," Sarah continued. "He always stays overnight, spending the evening at her establishment." Noah and Jacob exchanged meaningful looks. "The ranch would be less guarded," Noah said slowly. "Are you suggesting what I think you're suggesting?" Gabriella asked, her pulse quickening. Noah's expression was determined. "If Blackstone is in town tomorrow night, it might be our only chance to search for the journal." "It's extremely dangerous," Jacob warned. "Even with Blackstone away, there will be ranch hands, possibly his sons." "But possible," Gabriella insisted. "I know that house, every corner of it. I know where my mother would have hidden her most precious possessions." The discussion continued late into the evening, weighing risks against necessity. In the end, they formulated a plan. While Harold was in town the following night, Noah and Gabriella would attempt to enter the Blackstone ranch house and recover the journal. "One more thing," Jacob said before they retired. "Rebecca discovered that the territorial judge will be in Cimarron next week for circuit court. If we find evidence of fraud, we could present it directly to him." For the first time, Gabriella allowed herself to believe they might actually succeed. The next day passed in tense preparation. Jacob provided a detailed map of the area around Blackstone's ranch, while Sarah packed supplies they might need. By late afternoon, They had confirmation from one of Jacob's sources that Harold Blackstone had indeed arrived in town for the cattle auction. As dusk approached, Noah and Gabriella prepared to depart. They would ride to within a mile of the ranch, then approach on foot under cover of darkness. Sarah embraced Gabriella tightly before they left. "Be careful, child. No property is worth your life." "It's not just about the property," Gabriella replied softly. "It's about justice for my mother, for Martin Wells, and for myself." The ride to Blackstone's ranch was conducted in tense silence, both Noah and Gabriella lost in their own thoughts. The risks they were taking were enormous, but the potential reward, freedom from Harold's threats, and the recovery of Gabriella's rightful inheritance, seemed worth it. They left their horses tethered in a small grove of trees about a mile from the main house, continuing on foot through the gathering darkness. Gabriella led the way, her knowledge of the property guiding them around areas where ranch hands might be patrolling. "The back entrance is through the kitchen," she whispered as they crouched behind an outbuilding. "The cook leaves after dinner, and the hands rarely come to the main house at night." Noah nodded, his expression tense but resolved. "Where would your mother have hidden the journal?" "There's a loose floorboard in her bedroom, our bedroom," Gabriella corrected herself. "Under the rug near the window. She kept small treasures there that she didn't want Harold to find." The night was cloudy, providing good cover as they slipped across the yard to the back of the house. The kitchen door was locked, but Noah made quick work of it with tools Jacob had provided. Soon they were inside, moving quietly through the darkened house. Gabriella felt a chill as they passed through familiar rooms. This place, once her home, now felt alien and threatening. They paused at the foot of the stairs, listening intently for any sound of movement above. "His sons," Noah mouthed silently. Gabriella shook her head. "They usually accompany him to town," she whispered back, "particularly to Madeline's." They ascended the stairs cautiously, wincing at every creak of the old wood. The second-floor hallway stretched before them, lined with closed doors. Gabriella led the way to the last door on the right, her mother's room, which Harold had claimed after her death. Inside, the room was much as Gabriella remembered, though Harold had removed many of her mother's personal touches. The large four-poster bed dominated the space, while heavy curtains covered the windows. Moving quickly to the window, Gabriella pulled back the rug to reveal the floorboards beneath. Noah stood guard at the door as she worked her fingers into the crack of the loose board, lifting it carefully. "It's here," she whispered excitedly, reaching into the small cavity. Her fingers closed around a leather-bound book and several folded papers, the journal and something else. As Gabriella examined her find, Noah suddenly stiffened. "Someone's coming," he hissed. Gabriella quickly replaced the floorboard and rug, clutching the journal and papers to her chest. Noah pulled her toward the armoire, the only hiding place large enough for both of them. They had barely closed the armoire door when the bedroom door opened. Through a small crack, they could see a ranch hand entering the room, carrying a lamp. "Thought I heard something," the man muttered to himself, glancing around suspiciously. Gabriella's heart pounded so loudly she was certain it would give them away. Noah's arm around her waist tightened reassuringly. The ranch hand moved about the room, checking under the bed and behind curtains. Just as it seemed he would check the armoire next, a voice called from downstairs. "Joe, get down here. We've got trouble at the south pasture." The ranch hand hesitated, then hurried from the room, taking the lamp with him. Noah and Gabriella remained frozen in their hiding place, listening as multiple sets of footsteps rushed through the house and outside. "Now's our chance," Noah whispered after several minutes of silence. They emerged from the armoire and moved swiftly back through the house, reaching the kitchen door without further incident. Outside, they could hear shouting and see lanterns moving in the distance, headed toward the south pasture. "What's happening?" Gabriella wondered as they slipped away from the house. "Don't know, don't care," Noah replied tersely. "Let's not question our good fortune." They made their way back to their horses as quickly as caution allowed. Only when they were mounted and putting distance between themselves and the ranch did Gabriella allow herself to examine what she'd recovered. "My mother's journal," she confirmed, running her fingers over the familiar handwriting on the first page. "And these papers," her voice caught as she unfolded them by moonlight. "Noah, these are letters. From my mother to the territorial governor, expressing concern about Harold's pressure regarding the deed transfer." Noah's expression was triumphant. "That's it. That's our evidence." They rode hard through the night, returning to Cimarron just before dawn. The Sterns were waiting anxiously, relieved at their safe return and excited by their discovery. Over the next 3 days, they carefully examined both the journal and the letters. The picture that emerged was damning. Gabriella's mother had documented Harold's increasingly threatening behavior, his pressure to transfer the deed, and her growing fear. Most tellingly, she had written of overhearing a conversation between Harold and his eldest son about taking care of the notary after the deed transfer was complete. "This is enough," Jacob declared. Combined with the disappearance of Martin Wells and the testimony from Madeline's girls about Harold's boasting, we have a strong case for the judge. Gabriella could scarcely believe it. After months of fear and helplessness, justice seemed within reach, but one shadow still loomed over her hope. What if Harold returns to the ranch and discovers the journal is missing? She worried. He'll know someone was there. "Let him wonder," Noah said grimly. "By the time he figures it out, we'll have presented our evidence to the judge." But fate had other plans. That evening, a breathless messenger arrived at the Stern home with alarming news. Harold Blackstone had left Madeline's establishment in a rage after one of the girls mentioned a woman asking questions about him. He had ridden out of town immediately, headed for his ranch. "He'll know it was me," Gabriella realized, fear gripping her heart. "He'll come here next." "Then we need to move faster," Noah decided. "The circuit judge arrives tomorrow. We'll present our evidence first thing in the morning." They spent a restless night, taking turns standing watch. By dawn, there was still no sign of Harold, but the tension in the house was palpable. Jacob escorted them to the courthouse as soon as it opened, using his standing in the community to secure an immediate audience with Judge Harmon, who had just arrived from Santa Fe. The judge, a stern-faced man with penetrating eyes, listened silently as they presented their case. Gabriella, no longer disguised as a boy, spoke eloquently about her mother's death, her own mistreatment, and the evidence they had gathered. Noah and Jacob provided corroborating testimony, while Rebecca Stern presented the conflicting documents from the county records. When they finished, Judge Harmon studied the journal and letters carefully before speaking. "This is a serious matter," he said at last. "If what you allege is true, Mr. Blackstone has committed multiple crimes, including fraud, coercion, and possibly murder." "It is true, Your Honor," Gabriella insisted. "Every word." The judge nodded thoughtfully. "I am inclined to believe you, Miss Thorne. However, legal proceedings require due process. I will issue an order freezing the disputed property until a full hearing can be conducted." He fixed Gabriella with a stern gaze. "You understand that Mr. Blackstone will have the opportunity to defend himself?" "Yes, Your Honor," she replied, though the thought of facing Harold in court terrified her. "In the meantime," the judge continued, "given the allegations of violence, I will also issue a writ of protection, forbidding Mr. Blackstone from approaching or threatening you in any way." Relief washed over Gabriella. It wasn't a final victory, but it was a start legal recognition of her claims and protection from Harold's immediate threats. As they left the courthouse, however, their momentary triumph was shattered. Harold Blackstone himself stood in the street, flanked by his sons and two ranch hands. His face was a mask of cold fury as he spotted Gabriella. "There's the ungrateful thief," he snarled, starting toward them. Noah stepped protectively in front of Gabriella. "Stay back, Blackstone. We've just come from the judge." "I don't care if you've come from the president himself," Harold spat. "She's stolen my property and spread lies about me. I'll see her pay." Jacob moved to stand beside Noah. "The judge has issued a writ of protection, Blackstone. You can't touch her." Harold's laugh was ugly. "A piece of paper won't protect her forever." The confrontation might have escalated further if the sheriff hadn't appeared, drawn by the commotion. "What's going on here?" he demanded. Judge Harmon himself emerged from the courthouse, taking in the situation with a glance. "Sheriff, Mr. Blackstone is to remain at least 50 feet from Miss Thorne at all times by my order. See that he understands this." Harold's face contorted with rage, but even he wasn't fool enough to defy a judge openly. With a last venomous glare at Gabriella, he backed away. "This isn't over," he promised before turning and striding away, his sons and ranch hands following. "He's right about that," Noah said quietly to Gabriella. "This is just beginning." The next 2 weeks were a whirlwind of legal activity. Judge Harmon, convinced by the evidence they had presented, ordered a full investigation into Martin Wells's disappearance and the circumstances of the deed transfer. Harold was required to appear for questioning multiple times, his fury growing with each session. Gabriella remained with the Stearns, venturing out only when necessary and always with Noah or Jacob as escort. Despite the writ of protection, Harold's reputation for vindictiveness made everyone cautious. The investigation quickly uncovered more evidence against Harold. A ranch hand, motivated by a combination of reward money and resentment toward his employer, came forward with information about Martin Wells's fate. The notary's body was discovered in an abandoned mine shaft on Blackstone land. With this evidence, along with Gabriella's mother's journal and letters, the case against Harold became overwhelming. Judge Harmon issued warrants for the arrest of Harold and his sons on charges of murder, fraud, and conspiracy. But Harold Blackstone had no intention of facing justice. When the sheriff arrived at the ranch to execute the warrants, he found the house empty, valuables gone, and clear signs of hasty departure. "They fled," the sheriff reported grimly, "probably headed for the border." The news brought mixed emotions for Gabriella. While Harold's flight essentially confirmed his guilt and strengthened her claim to her mother's property, it meant he had escaped punishment for his crimes. It also raised the unsettling possibility that he might someday return seeking revenge. Judge Harmon, however, was untroubled by Harold's escape. "Frontier justice has its own way of dealing with men like Blackstone," he observed. "He'll never be able to show his face in New Mexico territory again without risking arrest. Meanwhile, the law is clear. With the deed transfer proven fraudulent, the property reverts to your mother's estate and as her sole heir to you, Miss Thorne." Just like that, Gabriella was a landowner mistress of a small but prosperous ranch that had been her childhood home. The victory was bittersweet. Regaining her mother's ranch couldn't bring back her mother or erase the months of abuse she had endured. But it represented a new beginning, a chance to rebuild her life on her own terms. As Gabriella prepared to return to the ranch, now legally hers, she faced a dilemma. Noah had been her protector, her ally, and increasingly, something more. But with Harold gone and her property secured, his obligation to her was fulfilled. Would he simply return to his own ranch now, their paths diverging? The evening before her planned departure from Cimarron, Gabriella found Noah on the Stearns' back porch, staring at the stars. "Thank you," she said softly, joining him, "for everything. I could never have done this without you." Noah turned to her, his expression unreadable in the dim light. "You're stronger than you know, Gabriella. You would have found a way." "Perhaps," she acknowledged, "but I'm glad it was your way." She hesitated, then asked the question that had been weighing on her mind. "What will you do now?" Noah was silent for a long moment. "Go back to my ranch, I suppose." "Check on Ellie. Get back to work." Disappointment settled in Gabriella's chest, though she tried not to show it. What had she expected? That he would declare his undying love, that he would ask to remain by her side. "Of course," she said, forcing a smile. "You've been away from home for weeks because of me." "Because of you," Noah repeated thoughtfully. "Yes, that's true enough." Another silence fell between them, this one heavier with unspoken words. Finally, Noah turned to face her fully. "Gabriella, he stopped, seeming to struggle with his words. "These past weeks, riding together, facing danger together, I've come to care for you, more than I should, perhaps." Gabriella's heart quickened. "Why more than you should?" "Because you're just starting to reclaim your independence," Noah said. "The last thing you need is another man making claims on your life." "Is that what you want to do?" Gabriella asked quietly. "Make claims on my life?" Noah's laugh was soft, almost pained. "What I want doesn't matter. What matters is what's right for you." "Shouldn't I be the judge of that?" Gabriella stepped closer, emboldened by the emotion she saw in his eyes. "Noah, when you found me that night, I was running for my life with nothing but the clothes on my back. You gave me your horse, and then you gave me so much more. Your protection, your home, your friendship." She took another step toward him. "But what if I want more than friendship?" Noah's breath caught audibly. "Gabriella, I love you," she said simply, the words feeling right as they left her lips. "I don't know when it happened. Maybe when you stood between me and Harold outside the courthouse. Maybe when you held me in the armoire, keeping me safe. Or maybe it was the first moment you offered me your horse, asking nothing in return." Noah's hands came up to frame her face, his touch gentle. "I love you too," he whispered. "Have since that first night, I think. But I was afraid you might feel obligated or grateful or confused." "I am grateful," Gabriella acknowledged. "But what I feel for you goes far beyond gratitude." When their lips finally met, it was like coming home, a sensation of rightness, of belonging that Gabriella had never experienced before. Noah's arms encircled her, drawing her closer as the kiss deepened, both of them pouring weeks of unspoken feelings into the embrace. When they finally parted, both breathless, Noah rested his forehead against hers. "So what now?" he asked. Gabriella smiled. "I have a ranch that needs rebuilding." "You have ranching experience. Perhaps we could help each other." Noah's answering smile was radiant. "I like the sound of that." 2 days later, they rode together toward Gabriella's ranch, their future. Ali had joined them, having ridden to Cimarron after receiving Noah's letter explaining their success and his plans. "Never thought I'd see the day," the old man had grumbled good-naturedly. Noah Jenkins, smitten like a schoolboy. As they crested the final hill and the ranch came into view, Gabriella reined Storm to a halt, taking in the sight of her childhood home. The house needed work, and the corrals were in disrepair, but it was hers, truly hers now. Noah stopped beside her, having second thoughts. "No," Gabriella replied, reaching for his hand. "Just thinking about how far I've come. A month ago I was fleeing with only the clothes on my back. Then a cowboy gave me his horse and changed my life forever." Noah squeezed her hand. "Our lives," he corrected gently. "You changed our lives." Together, They rode down toward the ranch and the future that awaited them. 5 years later, the Thorne Jenkins ranch was flourishing. The house had been repaired and expanded, the cattle herd had doubled, and the sound of children's laughter filled the once silent rooms. Noah and Gabriella had married 6 months after reclaiming her mother's property, in a simple ceremony attended by the Stearns, Illy, and a few friends from neighboring ranches. Their first child, a boy they named James after Noah's father, had arrived a year later, followed by a daughter, Elizabeth, named for Gabriella's mother. Harold Blackstone had never returned to New Mexico territory. Rumor had it he had met his end in a saloon brawl in Mexico, though neither Noah nor Gabriella put much stock in frontier gossip. They remained vigilant, but as the years passed, the shadow of fear gradually lifted. On the 5th anniversary of their first meeting, Noah surprised Gabriella with a gift, a new saddle for Storm, who had become her personal mount permanently. "For the horse that brought us together," he said, watching as she admired the finely tooled leather. "The horse and the cowboy who gave him to me," Gabriella corrected, embracing her husband. "I still can't believe you gave your best horse to a stranger." Noah smiled, wrapping his arms around her. "Best decision I ever made." As they stood together in the yard of their ranch, their children playing nearby and Ellie watching from the porch, Gabriella reflected on the journey that had brought them here. From desperation and fear to love and security, from a woman fleeing alone to the heart of a family. "I love you, Noah Jenkins," she said softly. "Thank you for stopping that night." "Thank you for being worth stopping for," he replied, sealing the sentiment with a kiss that promised many more years of happiness to come. Around them, their ranch, their home thrived, a testament to what could grow from an act of kindness on a dark night in the wild New Mexico territory, when a desperate woman with nothing but the clothes on her back encountered a cowboy with a good horse and a better heart.